The day I believed humanity would beg for peace was the day I discovered they had already chosen something far more terrifying. My name is Commander Kale Voren, and for most of my career, I believed every civilization followed the same pattern. Corner them, pressure them, wait for diplomacy. That belief made me successful until the moment our fleet intercepted the wrong convoy. It happened along a quiet frontier corridor nearly 400 light-years beyond Earth's nearest major naval station. Our long-range sensors identified 6 civilian transports carrying engineering equipment, medical supplies, communications hardware, and construction materials for distant colonies. 2 modest escort frigates accompanied them, hardly enough to concern a coalition battle group. Intelligence officers smiled as they delivered their reports. The convoy looked ordinary. The escorts looked outdated. The mission looked routine. Every calculation told me this would become another effortless demonstration of coalition authority. I ordered our flagship forward while broadcasting a formal inspection notice. Our formation spread across the corridor with practiced precision, sealing every obvious escape route. Most species reacted the same way when confronted by overwhelming force. They argued. They panicked. They demanded negotiations before anything else happened. The human convoy did none of those things. Civilian ships calmly adjusted their spacing. The escort vessels quietly moved into protective positions without aiming weapons or transmitting threats. Every maneuver appeared almost rehearsed, as though the crews had expected this exact encounter years before it happened. Their discipline unsettled one of my younger officers. He leaned toward the tactical display and whispered, "Commander, why does nobody look surprised?" I dismissed the question. Confidence often sounds like wisdom when victory seems inevitable. Aboard the communications vessel, Ethan Cole watched warning indicators illuminate across his console. Around him, technicians continued working with steady hands while encrypted channels activated one after another. Nobody shouted. Nobody rushed. Ethan verified a sequence of security confirmations before opening a transmission window connected directly to Earth's Strategic Response Command. The system accepted his credentials immediately. He entered 4 words that required no explanation because the people receiving them had prepared for this moment long before he joined the service. Black route confirmed. Begin. The message vanished into deep space before coalition signal suppression reached the channel. Ethan closed the terminal, looked toward the viewing port, and quietly returned to his station as though he had completed an ordinary checklist. On my bridge, the interception continued exactly according to plan. Inspection teams prepared their reports. Tactical officers confirmed complete control of the corridor. Senior commanders congratulated one another for resolving the situation without resistance. I even allowed myself a rare smile. Somewhere beyond the stars, I imagined frightened politicians on Earth preparing carefully worded diplomatic protests. What I did not know was that hidden beneath a mountain on Earth, silent command centers had already awakened. Massive holographic maps illuminated in synchronized sequence. Fleet commanders acknowledged predetermined orders without hesitation. Logistics networks shifted into motion. Communications relays connected thousands of distant systems with flawless timing. No emergency alarms sounded because no emergency existed. Humanity was not reacting to my decision. Humanity had been waiting for someone to make it. As our battle group completed its inspection, I believed the coalition had successfully controlled a single convoy. Years later, I finally understood the truth. We had not stopped Earth's mission. We had unknowingly activated the first move of a strategy designed to reshape the balance of power across the entire galaxy. And every victory we celebrated during those first few minutes was simply another step toward our own defeat. The galaxy waited for Earth to demand the return of its convoy, but humanity answered with something far more unsettling. They answered with absolutely nothing. During the first 24 hours after our interception, coalition media celebrated what they described as a flawless demonstration of authority. Political commentators confidently predicted emergency diplomatic requests within hours. Military analysts insisted that Earth's frontier commanders would soon withdraw from disputed corridors to avoid further embarrassment. Even the High Council prepared formal negotiation chambers, convinced that human representatives would arrive carrying carefully worded proposals for compromise. None of them appeared. Every official communication from Earth continued exactly as before. Merchant vessels departed according to schedule. Civilian traffic crossed established routes without interruption. Scientific expeditions launched on time. Frontier settlements reported ordinary construction updates instead of emergency alerts. To the rest of the galaxy, it almost seemed as though humanity had completely ignored the incident. That silence should have comforted me. Instead, it became impossible to ignore. Back on Earth, Ethan Cole entered a secure transportation elevator descending nearly 1 mile beneath the surface. The doors opened into a command complex so vast it resembled an underground city rather than a military headquarters. Hundreds of specialists quietly monitored enormous holographic projections displaying shipping corridors, logistics centers, communications relays, orbital infrastructure, and fleet movements across thousands of light years. Nobody appeared rushed. Nobody reacted as though a crisis had begun. Ethan approached a circular operations table where a senior admiral examined a living map of the frontier. Without lifting his eyes from the projection, the admiral spoke calmly. "The coalition believes they forced us to make a decision." Ethan nodded. "Did they?" The admiral allowed himself a faint smile before replying. "No. They only confirmed the decision we made years ago." Around the room, secure indicators illuminated one after another as previously dormant contingency protocols quietly activated. Reserve engineering groups departed maintenance stations under routine work orders. Civilian freight companies received updated navigation schedules that appeared completely ordinary. Long-range reconnaissance platforms shifted observation patterns by only a few degrees, changes so subtle that no foreign intelligence service considered them significant. Yet together those adjustments formed the beginning of something extraordinary. Humanity was not mobilizing for revenge. Humanity was synchronizing an entire civilization with remarkable precision. Meanwhile, aboard my flagship, I approved a proposal to transfer the intercepted convoy toward a coalition inspection facility. The operation looked straightforward. Escort vessels repositioned around the civilian transports while our navigation officers prepared the new course. Then something unexpected happened. Every human transport simultaneously switched to an independent emergency navigation protocol that complied fully with interstellar civilian safety regulations. Instead of resisting our fleet, the convoy calmly entered a protected holding pattern recognized by nearly every major government in the galaxy. Coalition captains suddenly found themselves unable to redirect the vessels without violating long-established civilian navigation agreements that even our own allies respected. The human escort ships remained disciplined and professional throughout the encounter, transmitting every required legal authorization with flawless timing. Within minutes, neutral monitoring stations across the frontier had recorded the entire exchange. We achieved nothing except delaying ourselves. Ethan quietly watched confirmation of the event appear inside the command center. Nobody applauded. Nobody celebrated. Another officer simply marked the operation as complete before moving to the next objective already waiting on the schedule. Ethan looked toward the expanding frontier map and finally understood the meaning of the message he had transmitted. Black Route had never been a rescue operation. It had been the opening signal for a strategy so carefully prepared that even humanity's first response required almost no response at all. As I reviewed reports explaining why our inspection had produced no meaningful advantage, I convinced myself that patience would eventually force Earth into making a mistake. I failed to realize that every hour we spent waiting was another hour humanity spent quietly arranging the galaxy exactly the way they wanted it to become. Every alien commander believed the next move belonged to us, and every one of us made exactly the same mistake. After the convoy incident faded from the headlines, coalition leadership approved a series of expanded frontier patrols designed to reinforce our authority without provoking open war. The objective sounded simple: increase our presence, inspect additional civilian routes, remind every neighboring system that the coalition remained the dominant power along the frontier. Admirals competed for the opportunity to command these operations because success appeared almost guaranteed. Earth still had not issued threats. Human fleets had not gathered into massive battle groups. Publicly, the galaxy interpreted their silence as hesitation. Privately, I began to wonder whether silence could sometimes conceal confidence. My doubts disappeared each time another briefing assured me that our numerical advantage remained overwhelming. On Earth, Ethan Cole stood before an immense holographic display where hundreds of tiny blue markers drifted almost imperceptibly across the frontier. Fleet movements represented only a fraction of what the map revealed. Cargo routes adjusted by a few degrees. Communications relays synchronized with neighboring systems. Orbital maintenance platforms quietly changed service schedules. Independent shipping companies accepted updated navigation recommendations that appeared completely ordinary to anyone outside the Strategic Response Command. Ethan studied the display before asking the senior admiral why so many civilian organizations had become involved. The admiral answered without looking away from the projection. Wars are not won when fleets move. They are won when entire civilizations move together. That single sentence transformed the map before Ethan's eyes. Every civilian adjustment supported future fleet operations. Every engineering shipment strengthened a logistics hub that coalition analysts still considered insignificant. Every communication upgrade quietly shortened response times across dozens of systems. Nothing looked dramatic because nothing needed to. Humanity was building advantages so gradually that nobody recognized them until they were already complete. 3 coalition patrol groups soon departed for separate frontier sectors under strict orders to establish a visible security presence. Their commanders expected routine inspections and symbolic demonstrations of strength. Instead, every patrol encountered the same remarkable pattern. Human escort vessels had already arrived before them, calmly guiding merchant traffic through perfectly organized navigation lanes. Civilian captains greeted the human crews with obvious familiarity while maintaining steady schedules without confusion or delay. Coalition commanders repeatedly altered approach vectors, hoping to discover an opening that would force Earth into an uncomfortable decision. Every adjustment failed. Human ships repositioned with quiet precision, never making aggressive gestures, never abandoning protected transports, and never allowing civilian traffic to become disrupted. Watching reports arrive from all 3 sectors, I noticed something that deeply unsettled me. The patrol commanders never described human fleets as reacting. They described them as already waiting. No matter which corridor we selected, Earth somehow occupied the ideal position before our arrival. Intelligence officers searched for intercepted communications or hidden surveillance networks. They discovered nothing capable of explaining the consistency. Ethan received simultaneous updates confirming that each coalition patrol had completed its mission without gaining meaningful influence over a single transportation route. Around the command center, no celebrations erupted because every outcome matched projections developed years earlier. Another operations officer quietly replaced one strategic display with the next phase already prepared. To everyone inside that room, the encounters were not victories. They were expected checkpoints along a much larger timeline. Standing alone after the final briefing, I replayed sensor recordings from every patrol one last time. Then I finally recognized the detail that every experienced commander had ignored. Human ships were never arriving early because they anticipated our movements. They were arriving early because they had already decided which routes mattered long before we ever considered them. In that moment, I understood a truth that terrified me more than any fleet could. We were still trying to predict humanity's next move, while humanity had quietly spent years predicting ours. The coalition believed the 72-hour deadline would force humanity into its first real mistake, but Earth treated our ultimatum as nothing more than another event already accounted for years earlier. Across the galaxy, every major news network predicted the same outcome. Human fleets would gather around one vital frontier corridor. Coalition armadas would establish overwhelming superiority. Negotiators would intervene before either side accepted unnecessary risk. The scenario appeared so obvious that even experienced commanders stopped questioning it. I approved the operational plan with complete confidence because every strategic model pointed toward the same conclusion. If humanity wanted to protect its colonies, they would have to defend that corridor. If they defended that corridor, our superior numbers would finally produce the decisive advantage we had expected since the convoy interception. On Earth, Ethan Cole entered the central operations chamber where the entire frontier glowed beneath layers of holographic projections. The senior admiral quietly acknowledged the coalition ultimatum before speaking only 3 words. Continue Phase 4. Nobody questioned the order because every department already understood its responsibility. Engineering teams confirmed that remote support stations had reached full operational capacity. Communications officers synchronized encrypted relay networks stretching across hundreds of systems. Logistics coordinators verified that supply convoys had completed every scheduled delivery hours ahead of projection. Fleet commanders acknowledged deployment windows measured down to the second. Ethan watched the enormous display with growing admiration because nothing about the operation resembled a desperate military response. Humanity was simply continuing a timetable that had never depended upon coalition decisions. As the deadline approached, our combined fleets assembled around the strategic corridor exactly as planned. Hundreds of coalition vessels established disciplined formations, while support groups secured nearby staging areas. Senior officers congratulated one another because long-range sensors confirmed what we wanted to see. Human escorts had increased their presence inside the corridor. Additional patrol groups appeared nearby. Every indicator suggested Earth intended to defend the location at any cost. I gave the order to advance, convinced that we had finally forced humanity into a predictable confrontation. Then the entire situation changed within minutes. Human formations calmly separated into several independent groups and departed along carefully coordinated routes without confusion or hesitation. At first my bridge celebrated, believing Earth had abandoned the corridor under pressure. The celebration ended when fresh intelligence reports began arriving from every neighboring sector. Human task groups had simultaneously appeared around communications gateways, logistics stations, navigation hubs, and civilian transportation centers hundreds of light years beyond the battlefield we had spent weeks preparing. Ethan observed each confirmation appear across the command display exactly on schedule. The corridor had never been the objective. It had been the distraction. While coalition commanders concentrated nearly every major fleet around one location, dozens of human formations quietly secured the infrastructure connecting the entire frontier together. Every movement had been rehearsed. Every arrival occurred within seconds of projection. Every commander understood not only where to go, but why that destination mattered. Coalition fleets immediately attempted to reposition toward the newly reported objectives. Yet every revised course encountered another organized human formation already protecting the surrounding region. Civilian traffic continued moving safely beneath disciplined human escorts while coalition commanders struggled to recover, the initiative slipping farther away with every passing minute. Standing before my tactical display, I finally understood that the countdown had never been created to pressure Earth. It had pressured us into committing every major decision exactly where humanity expected. We believed we had chosen the battlefield. Humanity had quietly chosen the entire campaign, and by the time our deadline expired, the frontier no longer resembled the map we thought we controlled. The decisive confrontation everyone had predicted finally arrived, but it lasted only 11 minutes before the future of the frontier changed forever. Coalition headquarters celebrated as our combined armadas converged on the largest transportation gateway in the region. Intelligence officers assured us that Earth had no choice but to commit every available fleet to defend the junction because losing it would supposedly fracture their entire frontier network. Senior admirals spoke with renewed confidence, convinced that weeks of careful pressure had finally forced humanity into a battle on coalition terms. Standing on the bridge of my flagship, I believed I was about to witness the moment history would remember as the restoration of coalition supremacy. I could not have been more mistaken. Beneath the mountains of Earth, Ethan Cole stood inside the Strategic Response Command while an enormous countdown reached its final seconds. Around him, hundreds of officers monitored separate layers of the operation without raising their voices. Fleet commanders confirmed synchronized positions. Logistics specialists verified uninterrupted supply corridors. Communications teams reported every encrypted relay functioning exactly as projected. The senior admiral looked across the room before quietly saying, "Begin synchronization." Instantly, the holographic map transformed. Hundreds of blue markers moved together with astonishing precision, not toward one battlefield but across an entire region of space. Ethan realized the coming engagement had never been designed to destroy an enemy formation. It had been designed to control every decision the enemy could still make afterward. Coalition fleets entered the gateway exactly on schedule. Human task groups appeared waiting in disciplined formations, protecting civilian navigation lanes while maintaining carefully measured distances between every squadron. Our commanders immediately attempted to surround the leading human force, believing superior numbers would gradually restrict their movement. Instead, Earth calmly separated its formations into coordinated layers that flowed through the gateway with remarkable timing. Every coalition maneuver encountered another prepared human group occupying the next critical position before our navigation computers completed updated calculations. Long-range communications suddenly experienced carefully managed delays as priority channels became saturated with perfectly coordinated civilian traffic already routed through alternate corridors protected by Earth. Supply vessels following our advance discovered human escort formations waiting calmly near every essential logistics route. Engineering stations supporting coalition operations reported transportation bottlenecks that had not existed only hours earlier because civilian commerce had already shifted toward secure human corridors. Nothing collapsed. Nothing descended into confusion. Every system simply began working better for Earth than it did for us. Ethan watched confirmation after confirmation appear across the strategic display. The gateway remained open. Civilian travel continued without interruption. Human logistics advanced exactly according to schedule. Coalition formations retained their impressive numbers, yet found themselves reacting to events instead of directing them. 11 minutes after the first coordinated movements began, the senior admiral quietly stopped the operational timer. "That is enough," he said. Ethan looked at the display in disbelief because no overwhelming display of force had occurred. The remarkable achievement was something far more profound. Humanity had quietly redirected the entire operational rhythm of the frontier without interrupting ordinary life. On my flagship, silence replaced confidence as tactical officers struggled to explain why every revised command arrived one decision too late. Fleet strength remained intact. Communications still functioned. Navigation systems continued operating. Yet every strategic objective had shifted beyond our reach. We had prepared for a battle measured by firepower, while humanity had prepared for one measured by timing, coordination, and trust. That was the moment I finally understood why Earth never feared our numerical superiority. They were never trying to overpower our fleet. They were ensuring that every choice we made would strengthen their position instead of ours. And once that invisible victory had been secured, the outcome of the campaign was already beyond our ability to change. The coalition believed humanity had finally revealed the full extent of its strength, but we had only been watching the smallest visible layer of a much larger design. In the days following the 11-minute operation, emergency strategy conferences filled every coalition command center. Senior admirals proposed new deployment patterns, revised defensive lines, and additional fleet concentrations around the remaining transportation corridors we still considered essential. Every recommendation followed familiar military logic. Protect strategic locations. Increase patrols. Commit additional warships. Restore visible authority. Yet every proposal failed for the same reason. Humanity was no longer competing for the same objectives. While we reorganized fleets, Earth quietly strengthened the systems that allowed entire civilizations to function. Ethan Cole stood beside the senior admiral as another frontier projection expanded across the central command chamber. This time the display showed more than military formations. Commercial routes, emergency response stations, engineering facilities, medical supply networks, communications relays, and orbital logistics hubs stretched across hundreds of systems like a living constellation. Ethan finally recognized what the admiral had been building toward since the convoy interception. "This is the real battlefield," he said quietly. The admiral nodded with calm satisfaction. "No," he replied. "This is the future. The battlefield only protects it." Across the room, civilian coordinators exchanged information with fleet officers without any distinction between military planning and public infrastructure. A replacement communications relay activated exactly as a construction convoy reached a remote colony. Engineering vessels departed one system while medical transports arrived in another. Merchant captains received updated navigation guidance that shortened travel times while keeping every route inside secure human patrol corridors. None of these actions appeared dramatic on their own, yet together they formed an extraordinary network that grew stronger with every passing hour. Humanity was not recovering from conflict. Humanity was accelerating because every successful operation reinforced every other operation. On my flagship, new intelligence reports arrived faster than my officers could organize them. Independent trading alliances had voluntarily adopted navigation recommendations issued by Earth because deliveries remained dependable. Frontier governors requested technical assistance from human engineering teams after witnessing their efficiency. Neutral monitoring organizations praised the reliability of human-protected transportation corridors. Most troubling of all, several coalition commercial partners quietly redirected long-distance shipping through routes coordinated by Earth, not because they feared humanity, but because they trusted humanity to keep promises. We attempted to answer with additional patrols, but each deployment discovered another carefully prepared human presence already cooperating with local authorities. Coalition formations still possessed impressive strength, yet every arrival felt increasingly symbolic. Human commanders never challenged us with reckless displays of force. They greeted every encounter with calm professionalism, maintained secure positions around civilian infrastructure, and continued supporting ordinary traffic as though our movements changed nothing. That quiet confidence unsettled my crews far more than open confrontation ever could. Ethan watched another wave of confirmations illuminate the command display. Additional frontier communities had synchronized emergency communications with Earth's coordination network. Merchant organizations requested expanded escort schedules. Scientific expeditions resumed exploration beyond previously disputed sectors because confidence had returned to the frontier. Ethan realized the greatest victory of the campaign could not be measured by territory or fleet numbers. It could be measured by how many ordinary people planned tomorrow without fear. Standing alone before the panoramic window of my flagship, I finally accepted a truth I had resisted since the first convoy crossed my path. Humanity never intended to trap our fleets inside a military campaign. They trapped our thinking inside an outdated understanding of power. We believed control came from commanding more ships than our rivals. Humanity proved that real leadership came from building a civilization so dependable that others willingly chose to stand beside it. And by the time I understood that difference, the galaxy had already begun following Earth's example instead of our orders. The day I finally saw humanity's real map, I realized we had never been fighting their fleets at all. Months after the convoy incident, I ordered every intelligence archive gathered during the campaign to be displayed together inside the Coalition Strategic Analysis Center. My officers expected me to study fleet formations, tactical recordings, and intercepted communications. Instead, I requested commercial shipping routes, engineering schedules, emergency response records, infrastructure projects, educational exchanges, medical logistics, and long-term transportation investments. At first, the analysts assumed I had grown distracted from the military situation. Then the projections began connecting into a single image that silenced the entire room. Human fleets had never moved independently. Every escort mission protected a future trade corridor. Every engineering station supported multiple frontier colonies. Every communications relay strengthened an entire region before anyone realized it had become strategically important. We had searched for hidden weapons while humanity quietly built hidden resilience. On Earth, Ethan Cole entered a briefing chamber unlike any he had previously seen. Instead of displaying battle reports, the central hologram revealed thousands of glowing lines connecting colonies, research facilities, industrial centers, emergency services, transportation hubs, and civilian communities across the frontier. Fleet commanders stood beside scientists, engineers, logistics coordinators, and medical administrators without any visible distinction between military and civilian leadership. The senior admiral rested one hand on the edge of the projection before speaking softly. This network is the mission. Everything else exists to protect it. Ethan slowly followed the illuminated routes stretching across the stars. He finally understood why every operation since the beginning of the crisis had prioritized ordinary people before strategic victories. Every secured convoy meant another colony continued growing. Every protected hospital shipment meant another world remained stable. Every reliable communications relay strengthened confidence between neighboring civilizations. Human strength did not begin with warships. It began with promises that were never broken. Determined to understand the truth, I ordered a direct comparison between coalition expansion and human development over the previous 20 years. The results were devastating. We had invested enormous resources into controlling territory. Humanity had invested the same effort into making territory worth protecting. We built stronger fortresses. Humanity built stronger connections. We measured influence through occupied space. Humanity measured influence through dependable relationships. Region after region displayed the same pattern. Systems cooperating closely with Earth experienced growing commerce, expanding infrastructure, faster emergency response, and increasing scientific cooperation. Systems depending entirely upon coalition administration remained orderly, yet isolated from the broader opportunities developing around them. Ethan later visited a civilian coordination center where merchant captains, rescue specialists, engineers, communications operators, and fleet officers planned the following month's transportation. Schedules together. No speeches celebrated military victories. No banners honored famous admirals. The greatest achievement inside the building was that thousands of families across distant colonies would receive supplies, medical equipment, and construction materials exactly when expected. Watching those preparations, Ethan smiled because he finally recognized the foundation beneath every human strategy. Stability was not the reward for victory. Stability was the objective that made victory meaningful. Returning to my flagship, I stood before the observation window and looked across a frontier I had once divided into military sectors waiting to be dominated. Now I saw something entirely different. Invisible pathways connected worlds that trusted one another because humanity had spent decades proving reliability one promise at a time. At that moment, I understood the greatest mistake of my career. We believed Earth's strongest weapon would eventually appear on a battlefield. It never did. Humanity's greatest strength had always been visible to everyone. We simply failed to recognize that a civilization capable of protecting hope across an entire galaxy had already won long before the first commander realized the war had truly begun. The greatest shock was not that humanity could have taken everything. The greatest shock was that they deliberately refused to. By every measurable standard, the coalition had reached the point where recovery depended entirely upon Earth's next decision. Our supply corridors remained open only because human patrols allowed civilian traffic to continue safely. Frontier communications operated reliably because Earth's relay network quietly supported emergency routing across multiple systems. Trade continued moving because merchants trusted human-protected corridors more than uncertain alternatives. Every strategic report arriving on my flagship reached the same conclusion. Humanity now possessed the influence, the logistics, and the operational advantage to expand deep into coalition territory if they desired. Every experienced commander expected the next phase to begin immediately. On Earth, Ethan Cole entered the central briefing chamber where the senior admiral reviewed the latest frontier assessment. Hundreds of blue indicators covered nearly every major transportation route linking coalition and human space. Fleet commanders waited silently for what many assumed would be the order to advance farther than ever before. Instead, the admiral calmly reached toward the holographic display and highlighted the frontier boundary without extending a single marker beyond it. "This line remains unchanged," he said quietly. Several younger officers exchanged puzzled glances. Ethan studied the projection before asking the obvious question. "We have the advantage. Why stop here?" The admiral smiled with the patience of someone answering a question prepared decades earlier. "Because our mission was never to own the frontier. Our mission was to make sure nobody could threaten it again." Within hours, Earth transmitted a formal declaration across every major communications network in the galaxy. The announcement contained no demands for territory, no requests for tribute, and no celebration of victory. Instead, it confirmed that every protected civilian corridor would remain open to peaceful travel regardless of political affiliation. Medical convoys would continue crossing former conflict zones without restriction. Engineering assistance would remain available for damaged infrastructure on either side of the frontier. Human escort fleets would maintain secure navigation until independent regional authorities confirmed long-term stability. The message stunned governments across known space. On my flagship, disbelief spread through every command station. Intelligence officers searched desperately for hidden conditions buried inside the declaration. Legal advisors examined every paragraph, expecting concealed obligations. Strategic analysts insisted Earth must be preparing a second phase that would eventually reveal its true intentions. Days passed, then weeks. None of our predictions came true. Human patrols continued escorting coalition merchant vessels with the same professionalism shown toward their own citizens. Rescue craft answered emergency distress signals without asking which government controlled the surrounding system. Construction teams restored damaged navigation infrastructure before beginning projects inside human territory. Every action contradicted centuries of military tradition. Eventually, I requested a secure conversation with a representative from Earth's Strategic Response Command. To my surprise, Ethan Cole accepted the meeting. His calm expression had not changed since the first day our fleets encountered one another. I asked the question that had haunted every coalition commander. Why refuse complete victory when it is already yours? Ethan answered without hesitation. Because complete victory is not measured by how much you can take. It is measured by how much fear you remove from ordinary people. The transmission ended, but those words remained with me long after the screen went dark. At that moment, I finally understood why humanity had become impossible to defeat. They had never built extraordinary fleets simply to overcome their enemies. They had built them so that one ordinary convoy carrying engineers, doctors, families, and hope could travel across the stars without asking permission from anyone ever again. That choice accomplished something no conquest in galactic history had ever achieved. It transformed respect into trust, and trust became a force far greater than fear. Never touch a human convoy. Those 6 words eventually became the first lesson taught to every new coalition commander. Not because humanity demanded it, but because history had already delivered the proof. Many years passed after the frontier crisis ended. Trade expanded farther than anyone had predicted. Formerly disputed systems developed into thriving centers of commerce and scientific cooperation. Civilian travel between neighboring civilizations became so dependable that an entire generation grew up without remembering how fragile those routes had once been. Yet inside every coalition military academy, the archives preserved a complete record of the campaign that changed our understanding of power forever. I personally requested that nothing be removed from those files. Every mistake remained exactly as it happened. Every assumption we believed, every warning we ignored, every quiet decision humanity made while we searched for dramatic victories. Young officers often expected those records to describe an overwhelming military defeat. Instead, they found something far more unsettling. They discovered that the coalition had slowly surrendered the initiative because we never understood what humanity had truly been protecting. On Earth, Ethan Cole no longer served inside the Strategic Response Command. His years of service had earned him quiet respect rather than public celebration. When invited to speak with new communications officers, he rarely discussed strategy or famous operations. Instead, he showed them a single image recorded on the day everything began. It was an ordinary civilian convoy moving peacefully through open space. Families, engineers, medical specialists, technicians, and cargo vessels traveled together beneath calm escort formations. Ethan always delivered the same message. If you ever forget why we prepare so carefully, remember this picture. Our responsibility begins here. The audience usually remained silent because they understood that every complicated plan, every synchronized deployment, and every difficult decision had existed for one purpose alone. Ordinary people deserved an ordinary tomorrow. During my final address before retirement, I stood before the newest generation of coalition commanders and looked across faces filled with the same confidence I once carried. I told them that our greatest error had never been underestimating human technology or human fleets. We underestimated human patience. We believed preparation looked dramatic. Humanity proved that true preparation often appeared completely ordinary until the exact moment it became impossible to stop. I reminded them that Earth never rushed toward confrontation, never wasted effort chasing pride, and never confused strength with intimidation. They invested years so others could enjoy peaceful days that required no recognition. That discipline accomplished what countless empires had failed to achieve. It transformed influence into lasting trust. As the ceremony ended, one young officer asked me the question I had expected for many years. "Commander, what was the strongest weapon humanity possessed?" I looked through the academy windows toward the endless stars before answering with complete certainty. It was never a weapon. The room fell completely silent. Humanity's greatest strength was that every convoy, every promise, every engineer, every doctor, every communications officer, and every escort fleet moved with the same purpose. They protected the future before anyone else realized it was in danger. The officers slowly nodded, finally understanding the lesson hidden beneath every campaign record. The galaxy did not remember humanity because they conquered worlds. The galaxy remembered humanity because they made countless worlds believe tomorrow would arrive safely. That was the day I finally understood the truth I should have recognized from the very beginning. We never lost because humans were stronger than us. We lost because they never stopped building the future while we remained busy defending the past. And from that day forward, every wise commander carried the same warning into every new generation. Never touch a human convoy.